Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Gaurav Sharma and with me is R.S. Raghu bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. New Delhi asserts safety of Indian nationals in Afghanistan is top priority as evacuation process continues. Secretary General of UN terms situation in Ethiopia as a humanitarian catastrophe. Navies of India and Germany conduct first passing exercise, PASEX, in the Indo-Pacific. India administers over 62 crore vaccines, over 1 crore doses in a single day. In Tokyo Paralympics, Indian paddler Bhavina-Ben Hasmukh-Bhai Patel enters semi-final of women's singles, ensures a medal. And in football, Manchester United completes transfer of Cristiano Ronaldo from Juventus. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign at government facilities for those above 18 years is underway, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and help others get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki doori for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. The government has said that safety of Indian citizens in Afghanistan is topmost priority. Briefing the media, the External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Arindam Bagchi said that India continues to monitor the situation in the crisis-hit country very carefully and this is an evolving situation.
Our primary focus and continues to be on Indian nationals. I think that was important. We had issued a number of advisories to Indians to leave. Nevertheless, some Indians remained there even after our embassy personnel were brought back. In addition to that, we were able to bring out some Afghan nationals as well as nationals from some other countries.
Mr. Bagchi said the government has evacuated 550 people in 6 separate flights either from Kabul or Dushanbe. He said of these, over 260 were Indians. He informed that the overall assessment is that the vast majority of Indians who wish to return have been evacuated. Mr. Bagchi said that the last flight had 40-odd people and there were reports that Afghan nationals were facing difficulties in reaching the airport. For the Afghans who are coming to India, the Ministry of Home Affairs, MHA, has announced e-emergency visas. These are 6 months visas. The MEA spokesperson said India is seeking a peaceful, prosperous and a democratic Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, at least 13 United States soldiers were among the 85 people killed in the explosions at Kabul airport. The Afghan affiliate of the Islamic State, ISIS Khorasan, has claimed responsibility for the attacks. India has strongly condemned the bomb blasts in Kabul. New Delhi extended condolences to the families of the victims of the terrorist attack. It said the attacks in Kabul reinforce the need for the world to stand unitedly against terrorism and all those who provide sanctuaries to terrorists. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden said that the U.S. forces would continue evacuation of U.S. citizens and Afghan allies to meet the August 31 pull-out deadline. In a televised speech on Thursday evening, U.S. President Joe Biden said that the military is in the process of developing operational plans to strike ISIS-K leadership, assets and facilities. China had condemned the Thursday attacks on Kabul airport and said it is ready to work with the international community to address the threat of terrorism and prevent Afghanistan from becoming a source of terrorism again. In Beijing's first reaction on the suicide bombing outside Kabul airport, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian today said that China has requested the relevant parties to take measures to ensure the safety of the Chinese personnel. China has kept its embassy in Kabul open and recently hosted talks between the Taliban and its ambassador, while criticizing the US for hasty withdrawal for all the chaos at Kabul airport and at other places.
Meanwhile, the UK has announced that its armed forces have now entered the final stages of the evacuation from Hamid Karzai Airport in Kabul. In a statement, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said that its top priority will be the protection of all those involved who are operating in a heightened threat environment. UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab spoke to US Secretary of State Antony Blinken following the horrific terrorist attack in Kabul on Thursday. They agreed on the importance of continued close counter-terrorism cooperation. They also discussed international engagement on the future of Afghanistan. Meanwhile, spokesperson of India's External Affairs Ministry, Mr. Arindam Bagchi, said that Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla will visit the US next week. Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has said that describing the situation in Ethiopia as a humanitarian catastrophe unfolding before our eyes. Speaking at the Security Council, Mr. Guterres warned that Ethiopia's youth will be the ultimate casualties. Stating that there is no military solution to the problem, Mr. Guterres called on all parties to immediately cease hostilities. Secondly, he called for a commitment for unrestricted humanitarian access everywhere and fully re-establishing public services. Thirdly, he called for creating the conditions for the start of an Ethiopian-led political dialogue to find a solution to this crisis. Meanwhile, External Affairs Minister of India Dr. S. Jaishankar said that he received a call from Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Ethiopia, Mr. Demeke Hassen. In a tweet, the minister said that the discussions covered UN Security Council matters and underlined the strength of their bilateral relationship.
Elsewhere in Kazakhstan, a series of blasts triggered by a fire at a military base in southern Kazakhstan killed 9 servicemen and wounded 90 people on Friday. According to reports, the country's defense minister said that soldiers died while trying to put out the fire, which triggered around 10 blasts. The Defense Ministry said that a fire broke out on Thursday at an ammunition depot in the southern region of Jambil and quickly spread to storage facilities while engineering ammunition is stored. According to reports, the exact cause of the incident has not been established, but Defense Minister Nurdan Yermekbayev has offered to resign.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris concluded a week-long trip to Southeast Asia in Vietnam on Thursday. At the beginning of the tour, in Singapore last week, Ms. Harris had strongly condemned China for what she described as China's use of coercion and intimidation tactics in the South China Sea. She flew to Vietnam on Tuesday evening. On Wednesday, Ms. Harris also announced the U.S. would be donating 1 million COVID vaccines to the nation. Ms. Harris also stated that she had pressed Vietnamese leaders on human rights issues and crackdowns on political dissent. The navies of India and Germany conducted the first passing exercise PASEX in the Indo-Pacific. The Germany Navy in a tweet said that India's INS Trikand exercise with the German frigate Bayern in the Gulf of Aden on Thursday. The Indian Navy in a tweet said that the exercise in the region for anti-piracy patrol enhanced the interoperability and facilitated exchange of best practices between partner navies in the maritime domain. India has crossed another milestone in the COVID vaccination drive, with a total vaccination crossing the 62 crore mark on Friday. The Union Health Ministry has termed it as yet another achievement in its fight against COVID-19. India also administered more than 1 crore COVID vaccine doses under its nationwide vaccination drive on Friday. This is the highest ever vaccination achieved in a single day since the start of the vaccination drive. Union Health Ministry said the country's cumulative COVID vaccination coverage has crossed 62 crore on Friday. The ministry said more than 47 crore vaccine doses have been administered as first dose and over 14 crore vaccine doses were given as second doses so far. This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates around the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on the latest developments in Afghanistan and India's evacuation efforts. In conversation are Veena Sikri, a former diplomat, and Aditi Tandon.
Now, Ms. Sikri, we have seen that there has been a bloody start to the Taliban regime. Although they had promised a while ago that they will not allow the soil of Afghanistan to be used for terrorist activities, but it pretty much seems like what was the worst is actually coming true. And the world was fearing this, wasn't it?
Yes, indeed. There's been a terrible, terrible incident yesterday. Truly tragic for all the people who lost their lives. And I think it reflects 2 or 3 different factors. First of all, as you have correctly noted, the Taliban's promises do not seem to be worth the paper they are written on, because they promise that their territory will not be used for any kind of terrorist attack. But then we see that this terrorist attack has happened. And I think that we cannot give the Taliban any deniability in this. A, they do have the governance of the country. B, I think the point is that we have to see all the factors involved. It is traditionally said that, but you see the Taliban and the ISIS, the Islamic State of the Khorasan province, they do not see eye to eye, they're enemies and so on. But we know that with the Taliban taking over, all the terrorist groups from different parts of the world seem to be flocking to Afghanistan. And this is a terrible situation. Secondly, we do know that the authority in Kabul, the responsibility for the security of Kabul, had been given to the Haqqani network. And the Haqqani network is actually very close to the ISIS-K, to the Islamic State of Khorasan province. So here we see that since it is the Taliban and the Haqqani network who agreed on saying that yes, Kabul security will be with the Haqqani network, and under Haqqani network's watch, this terrible blast has happened. So the deniability cannot be there for the Taliban. In fact, the responsibility has to be shared by both the Taliban and the Haqqani network. So far, only the ISIS-K has claimed responsibility and everybody else is trying to deny. So I think this is reflective of the very fragile situation in Afghanistan. The fact that there is no government at all. There is no government has been formed. So that with no government, there seems to be no governance as well. So it seems to be completely chaotic.
But I'd like to bring you back to the recent meeting of the United Nations Security Council. And isn't it very telling, Ms. Sikri, that External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar very correctly pointed out at the UNSC meeting that day, recently, that proscribed groups like the Haqqani network and Pakistan-backed terror groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed continue to operate with impunity and encouragement from Pakistan on the Afghanistan soil. And we also have a history with Haqqani network in the sense that it has links with the Al-Qaeda. And it did run terrorist training camps, including in Kashmir, earlier in the 1990s. How do you look at that scenario for the national security of India?
I think the Indian government is certainly very, very worried about the situation, because the volatility of the situation, the fragility of the situation in Afghanistan is very worrying for India and for all other countries in the world, but particularly for India. As you know, India has been deeply committed to the people of Afghanistan, and our External Affairs Minister has repeatedly said that our commitment is to the people of Afghanistan, and this commitment will continue. And we do know that the people of Afghanistan are looking to India to help them out in the situation. And India right now is a non-permanent member of the Security Council till the end of 2022. And this month of August, India is also holding the rotating presidency of the Security Council. Under India's chairmanship of the Security Council, 2 discussions have been held on Afghanistan, one on the 6th of August and the other on the 16th of August, which was the day after the Taliban overran the country. And in each of these, our External Affairs Minister, our permanent representative and all others involved have made it very, very clear about the dangers involved, the lack of democracy, the lack of religious freedom, the complete sway of terrorist groups in Afghanistan. The Haqqani network certainly has a very big role to play, and the Haqqani network is fully committed to the government of Pakistan. The ISIS-K is present in the eastern districts of Afghanistan, very close to the Pakistan border, and has been involved with the Haqqani network in these drug smuggling routes, in the human trafficking routes between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So I think that the dangers to the people of Afghanistan and the dangers to all terrorist groups, as our External Affairs Minister has so correctly mentioned, are very real. India has taken a leadership role in highlighting these concerns in the World Forum, in the United Nations, in the Security Council. And I sincerely hope that this will be reflected. I hope there is a resolution in the Security Council on the subject. We also saw that the Human Rights Council Chief, Michelle Bachelet, spoke about the violence, the threat to women, the threat to civil liberties in Afghanistan that has already been seen in the past 10 days or so after the Taliban overran the country. So I think all the organizations, all the concerned people need to get together.
Yesterday, at an important meeting of all parties where External Affairs Minister Mr. Jaishankar gave a detailed briefing on India's measures taken in Afghanistan, around 525 people have been evacuated, including some of the nationals of other countries as well, and Hindu and Sikh minorities who are Afghans have also been evacuated. But bringing you back to what the government yesterday did admit in the all-party meeting, that the big challenge is actually the full and safe evacuation of all Indian nationals from Afghanistan. And there was also an admission that some of the people are left behind. So, Ms. Sikri, at a time when the Western powers are also actually scrambling to escape and also evacuate their own people, with around 1,000 US citizens also left behind, how do you see the challenge for India in terms of safe evacuation, considering the embassy staff is also back in India?
It is a very challenging situation, and I think the government of India has been very successful so far, not only in completing this evacuation, but actually even to complete the evacuation of people, it requires a huge amount of coordination. The Taliban people, with the US authorities there, the Marines and so on, and with a lot of logistics to be looked at to get the people who want to leave the country, the Indian nationals and others, to the airport. Once to get to the airport, to get them inside the airport, to have the documents checked. It is a huge logistics exercise. And I'm very glad that the government of India held this all-party meeting yesterday. And after listening to the briefing by External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, it is quite remarkable that all the opposition members, so there was an all-party consensus on this. There was great appreciation for the efforts being made by the government of India, the success of the efforts being made by the government of India, and full support for the continuation of these efforts. The continuation will be very difficult, as we know that even as the blast took place yesterday, there were another group of people who had come to the airport and had managed to leave just before the blast took place. And now the next objective is to see when the window of opportunity will arise for this group to come back to the airport and then to be evacuated to India. So it is an ongoing effort. It is very tough. One cannot at all minimize the difficulties. I think one has to recognize the difficulties involved. But I think India will continue its contact with all players involved in this. And I hope that we will be met with success.
Do you see any change of strategy on the part of the Western powers, especially the US, which is committed to leaving Afghanistan by August 31? Do you see any change after yesterday's attack?
Right now, it is very clear till August 31st, nothing will change. I think President Biden has made that quite clear, that till August 31st, nothing will change. So they are determined to do whatever evacuations are possible by August 31st and then to leave Afghanistan. Now, what happens after that? This is the critical question. And I think that, as suggested by Michelle Bachelet of the UN Human Rights Council, when she spoke 2-3 days ago, I think we have to see the international responsibility for this. So whether we look at the United Nations, the United Nations Security Council, we have to see some organization which will have a monitoring role in Afghanistan, which will make sure that after the international powers, the Americans and the NATO powers leave, that there will not be a vacuum and that there will not be chaos and not be more and more of these kind of attacks. We already know, and this is a very important point I think we need to focus on, that so far the Taliban has not won the trust of the people of Afghanistan. The people of Afghanistan are resisting. We do know what's happening in Panjshir Valley. We do know that the Tajiks, 27% of the population, are very worried about what is going on. The Uzbeks and the Hazaras are equally worried. And the Pashtun population, which is 42% of the population, they do not all support the Taliban. Maybe less than half support the Taliban. Far less than half, maybe even just 20-25%. And Taliban, if they are to have any kind of governance, they have to win the trust of everybody. So in the Security Council debate, there was reference to an inclusive government. Very, very important. Inclusive government reflecting all segments of the population, all groups and religious minorities and ethnic minorities who will be able to participate in the governance of Afghanistan so that the trust will be there and everybody will be committed to good governance. This had not happened so far. There has been no outcome on that.
So far, Ms. Sikri, all we've actually heard the US President say that they will exercise financial tools to wield influence over Afghanistan. We know that the International Monetary Fund has also frozen its aid to Afghanistan, and these financial tools are being actually used right now. How does the world hold Afghanistan accountable on its promise that its soil will not be used to perpetrate terror across the world and specifically in the neighborhood?
As you said rightly, the IMF and World Bank have withheld all monies. But my feedback from Afghanistan, and especially the women of Afghanistan, is that they are worried because if there's no money in Afghanistan, already prices are going up. Already the value of the dollar has skyrocketed so that the value of the Afghan currency has fallen drastically. So the people of Afghanistan are suffering already. And so there has to be a balance as to how do we make sure that the people of Afghanistan, their suffering is minimized, but that governance is ensured. I do not think the Taliban has shown that sense of ability or tolerance to be able to get all the people of Afghanistan on board. So I think that while initial steps to withhold the financial flows, we have seen other measures. I can tell you, for example, one thing that, there was an announcement that all trade between India and Afghanistan has stopped. There was even some air trade, but that has stopped. And of course, the land is completely stopped. We have no trade now with Afghanistan. But there was also news that the trade from Afghanistan to Pakistan has gone up hugely. So obviously what is happening is Pakistan is keeping the borders open for anything that Afghanistan wants to sell, and they're taking it into Pakistan, and they will then export it from Pakistan as Pakistani goods, either take the money for themselves or say that it's a Pakistani export. And again, the benefit of that will not go back to the people of Afghanistan. So actually, the bottom line is that the people of Afghanistan are suffering enormously. And here again, it is the responsibility of the US government, who was there for 20 years, the NATO powers, the United Nations Security Council, and the people of the world all over. And India is fully prepared to play its responsible role in this. It is the collective responsibility to ensure that there is good governance in Afghanistan, there is no terrorism on Afghanistan soil.
You say the onus of proving that they will live up to their word is actually on the Taliban, and we'll wait and see what happens next. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Australia's Minister for Trade, Tourism and Investment, Dan Tehan, and India's Minister for Commerce and Industry, Mr. Piyush Goyal, held a video conference on Thursday. A statement by Australia's Trade Ministry said that the ministers appreciated the progress made in the 3 rounds of talks between the chief trade negotiators of both sides and discussed the way forward for an early conclusion of a bilateral comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, CECA. The two countries are looking to achieve an early harvest announcement by December 2021 on an interim agreement to liberalize and deepen bilateral trade in goods and services and pave the way for a comprehensive agreement.
India's Agriculture and Farmers Welfare Minister Narendra Singh Tomar has said that BRICS countries are well positioned to take a leading role in helping to achieve the objectives of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals to eradicate hunger and poverty. Mr. Tomar said this while chairing the 11th meeting of BRICS Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa agriculture ministers through video conference. He said, BRICS countries bring together the major emerging economies of the world, hosting 41% of the world's population and contributing 24% of the world GDP. Mr. Tomar said by increasing agriculture production and the income of farmers, the problem of income equality and food price volatility can be overcome. The minister highlighted the efforts made by India in preserving the agro-biodiversity by establishing and maintaining the national gene banks for plants, animals, fish and agriculturally important microorganisms at different bureaus. In the meeting, the action plan of 2021 to 24 for agricultural cooperation of BRICS countries was adopted. The action plan provides for enhanced cooperation in the field of agriculture amongst BRICS nations. The UK government made what it described as landmark amendments in its Environment Bill. The changes seek to halt and reverse the loss of biodiversity by 2030 as well as signing up to the Global 30 into 30 initiative to conserve or protect at least 30% of the world's land and at least 30% of the world's ocean by 2030. And now a report from the business world.
The BSE Sensex gained 176 points, at 0.31% to trade at 56,125. The NSE Nifty also surged 68 points, at 0.41% to trade at 16,705. Among global markets, Asian stock markets are mixed as investors awaited more cues on the US Federal Reserve's easing plans. China's Shanghai Composite Index gained 0.6% and South Korea's Kospi added 0.2%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng ended flat while Singapore's Straits Times Index declined 0.9% and Japan's Nikkei 225 fell 0.4%. European stocks were also down in intraday trade. Oil prices rose around 2% ahead of a potential hurricane forecast in the Gulf of Mexico. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading around $72.30 per barrel. Back home, gold prices fell 170 rupees at the multi-commodity exchange for October contracts. The precious metal was trading at 47,070 rupees per 10 grams. On the other hand, silver prices gained 430 rupees to 63,150 rupees per kilogram for September contracts when reports last came in. In the foreign exchange market, the rupee logged robust gains against the US dollar as it appreciated by 54 paise to close at 73 rupees and 69 paise against the US dollar. Arjun Chaudhary for World News, All India Radio.
Moving on to sports, in Tokyo Paralympics, Indian table tennis player Bhavinaben Hasmukhbhai Patel has entered the semi-final of women's singles after a 3-0 win over Serbia's Borislava Perić-Ranković. Bhavina has ensured a medal for the country. In the men's individual open compound round of archery, Rakesh Kumar stood third while Shyam Sundar Swamy ranked 21st. In powerlifting, Sakina Khatun finished 5th position in the final. And in football, Portuguese superstar Cristiano Ronaldo returned to the football club which propelled him to sporting greatness. On Friday, English club Manchester United confirmed the signing of Ronaldo from Italian club Juventus on a 2-year deal. The club in a statement said that it is delighted to confirm Ronaldo's transfer subject to agreement of personnel terms, visa and medical.
In cricket, at the end of day 3, India were 215 for 2 in their second innings against England in the third test at Headingley Leeds. Earlier, the visitors picked up the remaining 2 wickets early on day 3 to bowl out the hosts for 432 runs as they conceded a 354-run lead in the first innings. England skipper Joe Root continued his fine run with the bat in the series as he brought up his 3rd century in 3 games. And now, let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Washington Post writes, U.S. top commander says forces preparing for more ISIS attacks in Kabul. Globe and Mail reports, UN asks for clarification on North Korea's alleged shoot-on-sight orders. Financial Times writes, supply chain disruption threatens to hold back UK economic recovery. Wall Street Journal writes, in Taliban-ruled Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda-linked Haqqani network rises to power. Sputnik News says Russia's Su-24 plane crashes near Perm, pilots ejected. South China Morning Post reports landmark Japan-Taiwan ruling party talks yield agreement on Coast Guard drills. And Sydney Morning Herald writes Joe Biden vows to hunt down terrorists behind Kabul airport attack. A quick look at the headlines once again. New Delhi asserts safety of Indian nationals in Afghanistan is top priority as evacuation process continues. Secretary General of UN terms situation in Ethiopia as a humanitarian catastrophe. Navies of India and Germany conduct first passing exercise PASEX in the Indo-Pacific. India administers over 62 crore vaccines, over 1 crore doses in a single day. In Tokyo Paralympics, Indian paddler Bhavinaben Hasmukhbhai Patel enters semi-final of women's singles, ensures a medal. And in football, Manchester United complete transfer of Cristiano Ronaldo from Juventus. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Singapore.
But मन अभिमान नारी सकल लोक मां सबुरे वंदे.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.